So I am very pleased today to be here with Randy Seamans from AWS, NiMo Mohamed from NetApp, and Wayne Lamb, our founder and CEO from Cirrus Data, along with Mark Greenlaw, who's our VP of Technology Strategy. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here today. Thank you, everyone who's coming online. We are going to be talking about beyond VMware, what options are out there. We're going to specifically talk a bit about AWS and FSxN for ONTAP. So before I turn the presentation over to Randy, I just want to remind folks at the bottom of the screen, you can ask a question. There is a chat button down there. You can chat me directly, or there's a Q&A button you'll see down there, and you can put your questions in. We will be taking them at the end, but please feel free to ask them anytime throughout the session. We are recording this, and it will be available following the presentation. So with that, as a quick intro, Randy, the floor is yours, sir.
All right. Thank you, Jocelyn. So I'm Randy Seamans. I'm a global storage specialist from AWS, and I'm here to present today on why you may want to consider AWS for your VMware estate migrating to AWS. So here's a little bit of background. When you're considering, obviously you showed up here, so you do have an interest maybe in looking at a VMware alternative and perhaps AWS. So we do live in interesting times. So you always want to know, is this just you, or is this pretty much something that's really changed in the industry? And I think it is. And Gartner seems to agree. There's a Gartner community poll that they polled the VMware user base in December, and it shows that 74%, oh, let me see, we're on the wrong slide here. There we go. That 74% of VMware customers are considering their alternative and exploring alternatives. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're considering going to the cloud, because a lot of those, they may have needs to be on premise, or let me see if I can get the slides working here. Okay, so that's yeah, sorry for the interruption there. The slide advanced unexpectedly. So that seems to be doing it again. So let's
You
let's
probably
see.
have a auto events somehow set.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
So back to the point at hand. So those workloads that are wow, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, it just keeps going forward. Sorry for the disruption here. All right. So 95% of customers that are looking to move, of new digital workloads are looking to use the cloud. So perhaps if you are on premise, you are considering AWS. So why would that be? What would be the reason that you would be considering AWS? Some business drivers are the increased licensing cost of VMware, risk and disruption to your environment, perhaps you want to leverage the AI ecosystem in AWS, which we have a full offering that is your shortcut on-ramp to leveraging AI in your organization. And as part of that journey, maybe you're becoming a data-driven organization, which is really enables you to go into AI as well. Consolidate systems, because maybe you're doing mergers and acquisitions, and improve your business agility, because you can cut out all the time for deployment, which is months to years of deployment cycles. You can now basically the cloud is instantaneous for setting those environments up. Technical drivers you may be interested in is reduce technical debt. I don't really agree with that, the short version of that. I think it's a little more complicated than that. Any environment that you currently have, let's say your VMware environment, you have to expend effort, mental effort, time, and you've already gone through the learning curve. And so you get some benefits from that. And we all know that VMware has some great benefits. But as time goes on, you always should be looking at what those benefits are versus what it cost you going forward. And so that's why people are looking at moving off of VMware and into AWS. You can improve your security and stability and reliability by using a resilient AWS cloud, consolidate or eliminate data centers, and you can accelerate cloud adoption while retaining certain workloads on premises. And you may not be aware of this, but AWS has this thing called the AWS Outpost, which is real AWS hardware, physical hardware that lands in your environment. And that's usually used for environments that cannot be run in the cloud due to security issues, proprietary information, which I argue that really not is a concern, but you may feel that way, or more accurately, very low latency requirements or things to do in case of disaster. Typically those are healthcare environments, maybe where a small environment runs on premise, or factory floors, things like that. There is also little known out there is the availability of something called local zones, which I'll talk about that a little more. Increase your IT staff productivity and retention because people want to have valuable future forward training and capabilities, and accelerate application delivery, which we all know that you can take advantage of all the services that we have in AWS to be able to do that. So let's take a look at why AWS in particular versus the cloud in general. AWS has been around for 18 years, kind of started the modern cloud game, if you will. We have 36 regions. Each region is made up of availability zones, of which there are at least 3, if not 5 or 6 in some cases, availability zones. What's an availability zone? It's a cluster of data centers, if you will, that stand on their own, and they're closely located. So that geographic area is called a region, if you will. A lot of security features are built into AWS, and even though we claim 200 plus service offerings, the number is actually much higher than that. We just don't like to overwhelm people with the scope of our environment. And 2 things I'll focus on the bottom right hand of the page: ecosystem. 460 migration competency partners. Now, that's migrations of all types and classes, covering the waterfront into many different types of services. But we're here today to talk about storage and hypervisor migration, which Cirrus Data will be the agent that will be doing that under the covers for us. So I want to also double down on the hybrid offerings there. So that's AWS Outpost. Cirrus supports Outpost as well. So it doesn't really matter what portion of it you want to land on an Outpost on your premise or in AWS in the cloud. And by the way, we're talking about FSxN NetApp, which is ONTAP. That is supported in both Outpost environments on your premise with real NetApp hardware and real AWS hardware, or FSxN NetApp in AWS as well. So a lot of flexibility there for your environment. Next slide talks about the sort of environment that we have that can help you get to where we're at. Amazon Q is an AI-based sort of expert that makes recommendations and understands things, and it's quite an offering leveraging AI. It has and understands about VMware migration. And so it can make high-level suggestions about your VMware estate. We have a service called AWS Application Migration Service for it may be appropriate to do application level migration as well. And there is an area of expertise we call the AWS Migration Hub and Migration Journeys that get you started on your migration to AWS and help you along the way. And all of those may leverage different ISV tools, which you saw earlier. There's a large number of those. And what's interesting, there we go. Oops, sorry, I clicked it twice. We want to go back to that. All right. What's interesting there is on the Cirrus data. I wrote a blog about this several months back, and there's the link to it there. And maybe you'll be able to get to it. And it's talking about and walks you through how easy and seamless and transparent this migration to AWS, moving the hypervisor at the same time you're moving the storage is, and talks about the automation. We like to call it hyper automation, and it's fully, in my opinion, it's the best in the world. And I've been around for quite a while. And so we have some really customers at scale using this. Of course, small customers, medium customers, and large customers use this. What I've got to share with you today is a very large customer. It's Danske Bank. Danske Bank is a Nordic area bank and financial services provider. So they're more than a bank. They do the kind of like the fidelity of that area, which is the financial services. And they have over 16,000 physical servers. Of course, they have VMware and some physical servers as well that are running bare metal. But Wayne, about how many VMware VMs do you think are in their estate currently?
Yeah, so they have different phases, and based on their purchase commitment and stuff, my best guess is probably close to 40 to 50,000.
Yeah, so this is a very, very large environment. And so they contacted AWS, and we kind of led this migration environment. And so their initial feedback was, we would like to go faster, right? So their expected outcome was we're reduced by at least 50% the migration timeline. And so in comparison to what, you might ask? Well, in comparison to AWS's initial estimation of the migration timeline, right? So of course, Danske Bank has their estimation of the migration timeline, which you'll see in a minute. And we had our idea of the migration timeline, but they wanted to go even faster. So we leveraged Cirrus to be able to go even faster with this hyper automation solution that we're going to show you. And along the way, AWS assisted them in the training and certification of over 700 employees, and that will continue to grow over time. Migration is more than just moving the data, it's more than just rehoming the hypervisor. It's a large process, and AWS can take that under its wing and ensure that you have great success. So next slide is a little quote from their senior vice president of technology platforms. And they said that for organizations of their size, cloud migration typically takes 5 to 8 years. And you imagine why. They have tens of petabytes of data and 30 to 40,000 VMs, physical server, a huge environment. So they collaborated with us to develop a highly automated, data-driven approach to cloud migration. And so we provided the overarching sort of theory, and of course, Cirrus Data provided the hyper automation under the covers to be able to do that. So getting started. And this is my last slide, and we'll get then NiMo will talk a little bit about what FSxN is and why it's appropriate, and then Wayne will show us the goods on how Cirrus actually operates. All right, so the first thing we do is we assess your VMware estate. Then we leverage partners, in this case it's Cirrus, and then we decide on an approach and strategy, and then we can utilize incentive programs. Don't forget this last one. Now, there are various programs at AWS that give you credits off of your AWS bill for migrating certain types of VM workloads to AWS. So make sure to take advantage of that as well, because it can be significant in terms of price reduction to make essentially, and to the point where maybe your migration becomes essentially free or no cost. Let me put it that way. There is nothing free in the world. So with that, I'll turn it over to NiMo, who will talk to you a little bit about FSx NetApp. Oh, NiMo, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you, Randy. Like always, very informational. Let me check. I can move the slides. Yes, I can. Thank you. Thank you, Jocelyn. So now, as Randy said, we will talk about FSx for ONTAP. So how many of you in this audience group, I see, good amount of people in here, have heard about FSx for ONTAP? Again, you can use the chat to actually, put your poll in there. Now, I'm sure most of you guys have heard about this service, right? And this is, of course, one of the favorite service within AWS offerings. And with respect to its siblings, it really boasts features that makes application deployment really a breeze within AWS, right? So let's talk about what is FSx ONTAP. So FSx ONTAP is nothing but a fully managed AWS storage service powered by ONTAP technology. And let me emphasize the point again, this is a first-party service that is managed and provided by AWS, but just gives you the beauty and the capabilities of ONTAP. And so what does it do? It combines all the well-known capabilities that ONTAP offers, its performance, as well as the APIs, so as to provide the simplicity, that you get within AWS. How cool is that, right? And this is the reason why FSx ONTAP is indeed the favorite kid within the AWS storage portfolio. So now let's talk about the feature sets that FSx ONTAP offers. So it starts with multi-protocol in there, right? And that's the first of its kind within AWS. So you get NFS v3, v4.1, SMB3, 2, S3, and then of course, the blocks services, which is nothing but iSCSI and NVMe over TCP, which means you're in essence running ONTAP, in the cloud, but without the know-how or, the concerns of racking them, managing them, administrating them. All you do now is focus on your application and the workload. Let me just get all of these guys in here. Yeah. Now, because of this approach where AWS allows you to actually spin up FSx ONTAP as a first-party service, that means you can spin up an enterprise storage in fraction of minutes. I would say it takes around 20 to 25 minutes to provision it. But as I said, you don't have to really know about what ONTAP is or how to administer it. All you need to know is, hey, I need this much capacity, I need this much IOPS and throughput. Boom, you get started. And you can spin up multiple file systems. When I say file system, it is nothing but a storage controller itself. And you can have n number of them without worrying about, hey, how do I rack an ONTAP system in there? You don't have to. All you do is use the AWS console. Boom, you get started, right? So the uniqueness of this service really lies in handling multiple protocols, as we mentioned, and snap mirroring the data using block level replication between on-premises to AWS or between two AWS regions itself or between availability zones, for migration and disaster recovery purposes. It also provides all of those ONTAP capabilities, like snapshots, clones, storage efficiency features like compression, deduplication, compaction. The list keeps going. All the feature sets that ONTAP offers, it pretty much provides all of them out there. Now, along with tiering capability, which means you can move your cold data to a lower cost elastic storage, all providing you optimization from a storage standpoint. What does it mean? It implies you have huge storage savings, right? Apart from that, ONTAP also provides you multiple layers of defense for protecting the data. So let's take an instance. So if you want to protect from ransomware attack or malicious intent, then you can enable tamper-proof snapshots. Apart from that, it also provides you snap lock, which is now free of charge. That means you can have your organizations to meet all the regulatory and the worm compliance. And finally, the most interesting feature that I like personally the most and what I've seen our customers like is clones. Now, if you talk about deployment, you can have either a single availability zone deployment or a multi-availability zone deployment. Depending upon the region, you can have the appropriate generation, and you can even have up to 12 HA pairs, deployed as well.
Hey, Nemo, before you move on, can I add something? Because it is a bit different running FSx NetApp in the cloud than it is running ONTAP on premise. And that is that you can scale, because you're in the cloud, you can
Yeah.
scale the throughput and IOPS of that up and down. So let's say you have a workload that runs, Black Friday or something like that, right? And you can scale that performance up for that week and then scale it right back down with just from the AWS console. And that's a huge difference between an on-premise because otherwise you have to, plan far in advance and have a lot of hardware and make a lot of payments. So that's one of the cost savings of running in the cloud that you may encounter.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Randy. And that's exactly what I was about to cover in this particular slide. So I'll actually take that part out of it. But just so that, as Randy mentioned, and to the point that I mentioned in the previous slide, there is no need for you to worry about, anything with respect to on-premises ONTAP. All you do is get started. And to the point that Randy said, you can actually change your throughput and, menu IOPS on the fly, including the capacity, right? So that's the good part. But again, keep in mind, you cannot shrink the capacity today, but you can actually get started. But then the most important aspect is definitely your IOPS and throughput. And then we have the tiering capability, right? Now, with that, it is a nice segue to say, hey, we allow you to select from multiple service levels for FSx ONTAP. So that means you can start small. You can start either from 128 megabytes per second, which is for small workloads, for websites and so on, and go up to 6 gigabytes of throughput as well with 200,000 IOPS. That is the difference. Now, if you would decide, hey, I want to start small at 1 gigabyte of throughput, then I want to move up to, a higher level of throughput, you can easily do that. That's the simplicity. Now, the key point to keep in mind is that your SSD IOPS, that you see on the slide, and the capacity would define your SSD IOPS itself, and the throughput would define your NVMe cache, as well as your network IO performance. Those are simple factors. So all you do is just get started by saying, hey, this is what I need, and you get the performance. And if you want to actually improve it or increase it, just go and actually change that. And because of FSx ONTAP capability, it will do that transparently for you. And that's one important point to keep in mind. When you change the throughput or IOPS, there is no dip of performance or there is no downtime. It is actually performed with a proper failover and give back, as needed. So now that kind of, puts us the question in terms of, you heard about the capabilities. I'm sure everyone would be interested to see all this on-premises, functionalities that customers have been using. You can now leverage that as a first-party service in AWS. Now that would put the next question. Hey, what kind of, solutions can actually, deploy in AWS with FSx ONTAP along with EC2 instance, or is there any other option? So the options are endless. So whatever you have in AWS with respect to virtualization, which is EC2 instance or a VMware offering, you can actually tee both FSx ONTAP with the EC2 instance as an iSCSI disk or as an NFS mount, not as a boot disk, but that's something we'll talk during the Q&A session, how you can do that specifically. But today, the FSx ONTAP is supported as a data disk, both as iSCSI or as an NFS mount, or as a data store, or as a guest mount with any available VMware offerings in AWS. So now let's talk about one specific feature that we have seen customers really asking us and really like. So I'm just taking SQL database as an example here, but it can be any volume for that matter. So I'm sure by seeing the slide, you know what I'm going to talk about. It's nothing but cloning. So every organization out there needs cloning in one or the other format, and they have been heavily doing it in their on-premises world. And when they go to cloud, absolutely, there is no difference. You still need to have cloning functionality, but the important aspect here now is how do you do that by keeping your costs down? Now, this is where FSx ONTAP really comes into the picture. So if you look at the slide, if you do it the traditional way, what you need to do is you need to create a volume out of the snapshot, and then you need to create n number of them. Whether you're using any third-party storage, as from the marketplace offering and so on. But if we look at how FSx ONTAP can do it, and that's the beauty of the solution, you would see FSx ONTAP would actually allow you to create hundreds or thousands of clones without incurring any additional cost or space, unless you are writing new data onto these cloned volumes. And that's the only time when there is capacity that is actually being, main consumed. Isn't that cool? That is one of the reasons why we have seen many of the customers, coming and actually leveraging FSx ONTAP with EC2 instance for databases workload specifically. But we'll talk about all the other workloads as well. So there is no restriction. As you saw, you get the performance that you need with the HA pairs and the scale up capabilities and the scale out capabilities that FSx ONTAP provides. Right. So that's about one feature, but every other feature, as we discussed, if you take ransomware and if you want to make sure, hey, my volumes or my snapshots are not deleted by a malicious user, or, I don't want any of my administrators to go and play around with the data and then get them deleted, you can have tamper-proof snapshot enabled. So that way you don't have to worry about ransomware. You are protecting your data right and there. So we spoke about the capabilities, we spoke about the performance, we spoke about what are the options, to keep your data with FSx ONTAP, be it with EC2 instance or VMware. But in this particular session, we are focusing on EC2 instance. You would now be wondering, hey, I got the data on it. How do I protect that data? Obviously, I can use storage snapshot. Can I make it application consistent? Yes, you can. That too, without any additional licensing cost. How do you do that? You leverage NetApp Snap Center that can create snapshots, which is application consistent, as you can see, for n number of application plugins, be it any database, or using the file system plugin at the ISQZ learn level, which is at the volume behind the scenes, or for the NFS mount. That's a simplicity that FSx ONTAP enables with the off-tap products, and the integrations that is in place. So that means you're covered. Again, there is no additional licensing for it. It's very similar to what we spoke about SnapLock, which is other functionality that, FSx ONTAP offers. Recently, we have actually, removed the cost for that as well. So there is SnapLock is actually free of charge now. So you can leverage all of this beauty that you have been doing similar to what in the on-premises world. So now it's time to look at how a customer saw the benefit of actually moving to AWS, leveraging FSx ONTAP, and how much of cost savings they could actually see. So simple example, a mid-sized customer who had around 428 virtual machines, with around 550 terabyte of allocated storage, out of which around 20% was for root volumes or the OS-based volumes, and with an overall storage utilization of around 80%. The slide would actually talk for itself. As you can see, that was around a whopping 44% savings by using FSx ONTAP. And that is what FSx ONTAP brings onto the table. Now, how can you find this? You can actually work with AWS, solution architects, so as to identify, what savings you can actually get. But at the meantime, NetApp has also introduced a new tool called as Workload Factory, which has migration advisor functionality. This will help you in understanding where to land your workload data and which is the optimal one. Of course, in this case, it is FSx for ONTAP with all of those storage savings techniques. Now, if you are evaluating a migration strategy or planning to optimize your existing storage environment, then ensure you check out our migration advisor. There is a lag when I'm moving things. Okay, so that brings up to the question in terms of which virtual machine should we place? And as touched up on the earlier slide, FSx ONTAP is ideal for any workload, any application specifically, but it depends on what requirements are in there. So I would say you are the best judge to identify that, depending upon what your requirements are with respect to whether you need snapshots, whether you need cloning functionality, whether you need performance. You, as an administrator, know your environment, you can make the right choice. But FSx ONTAP would actually give you all of those feature sets that will enable you to actually run that workload. Now, if you want to double click further into the details to say, no, tell us a couple of applications. Again, this is not the only ones that we actually recommend, but it would start with databases. To the point that databases generally require clones. They need faster storage, with storage efficiencies in there as well as, for disaster recovery, especially if you want to do block level replication, save some licensing cost, on the disaster recovery side from an application standpoint, from the databases standpoint, you can use FSx ONTAP. And not just that, if you have a shared storage requirement for your databases, then FSx ONTAP is the ideal one rather than actually using third-party mechanisms to replicate the data, right? Because you get all of this as a first-party service, and the replication, everything is taken care of behind the scenes, using the FSx ONTAP functionality that is exposed. Now, the other workload is nothing but those ones that needs dev test workflows where you want to create thousands of clones with absolutely zero cost, right? That is another big savings that you would actually see. It also spans to productivity tools or advanced analytics, workloads that you need huge volume as well as, compute needs along with the capacity, and then tear down that capacity once the testing and everything is done. So as I said, it is any workload that requires the cool cost savings as well as the enterprise grade features that you're looking for. So to summarize, I would say FSx ONTAP can be used with any workload that is running on an EC2 instance. The choice is absolutely, lying in your hands so that you can control your storage cost, by leveraging the proven enterprise storage capabilities without worrying about the know-how. As I said, you don't have to be an ONTAP expert to run FSx ONTAP. And you don't have to have ONTAP in your on-premises to run on FSx ONTAP in AWS. This is a service that you can actually, pick based on what the workload requirements are, And with that said, I'm sure, you heard all of this cool, exciting stuff. I'm sure everyone is thinking, hey, how can I get this data from my VMware environment to an EC2 instance with FSx ONTAP? Now, here is a quick sneak peek of what you can do, but I would let Wayne talk through this in detail. With that, Wayne, back to you.
Okay, I found the unmute button. All right, there you go. Thank you, Wendy and NiMo, for introducing your respective know-how in your platforms. So Cirrus has been collaborating with AWS, the king of a cloud, right? And of course, NetApp, very, very serious, very important partner for the storage on the providing the migration service so that you can adopt the new technology in a much, much smoother fashion. So what is the problem that we're trying to solve? I mean, you have AWS, a nice cloud there, right? And you have the FSxN or either on-prem NetApp or in the cloud as FSxN. The problem is that even if you license the solution and whatever, often because of the lack of downtime, the lack of know-how or whatnot, you're just not getting the benefit of your new licensing or acquisition, right, in a timely fashion, right? And yet the monthly bill and whatever can tend to get add up. Okay, so the problem we're trying to solve is basically stemming from the fact that the clouds, which have different regions, security restriction, and so on, right? The storage, and if your source environment that you want to move from is not already inside the cloud, right? By definition, they're not compatible. So for example, if you're going from VMware on-prem to the cloud, even though the cloud vendor tends to give you maybe some free tool to take care of the easy cases, there are a lot of corner cases, there are a lot of high workload, high up workloads. There are a lot of things that are not just basic storage, but involving iSCSI connections or PRDMs and things like that would make those free tools often not compatible, and you're dealing with more exception than the rule, right? So that's one thing. So stemming from the fact that clouds and on-prem compute environments are not really compatible. You cannot vMotion from one place to the other, right? So that's number one. And number two, even if you do have the tool to do it, or you probably just use something that you know, maybe async, right? Maybe if I can shut down the server, I'll just do some iSCSI connection and do a DD. Yeah, maybe for a few terabytes in a couple of hosts. But if you talk about hundreds of hosts and so on, those homegrown solutions simply can't cut it, right? Human errors and all those things is going to contribute to more delay than you can plan for. And so the real truth is that if you have downtime, you don't need us, right? You can always just, like I said, have the source, network connect to the destination, drag and drop your folder, and you're done, right? If everything can be offline, shut down your database, you can just copy the files. But when you have challenges of, having 24/7 workload that you simply cannot shut them down, then you need something special. So our migration solution is to solve these problems so that you can migrate anytime from anywhere at will and without having to shut down your application. So truly zero downtime migration. And I'll talk about a little bit the distinction on migration without downtime and migration and even cut over the workload without downtime. And often the second part is no tool in the world really can help you with that. And Cirrus is the SaaS solution that we provide, or our on-prem solution, is very unique in the fact that we can truly do include zero downtime, including cutover. So the solution that we bring to the table, right, is to answer those challenges, right? So we created a SaaS platform, and we also have another product for on-prem for legacy solutions that are on Solaris and Unix, or maybe even AS400. Okay, those you cannot just use a SaaS solution. You have to have some sort of a appliance to do the physical interception in order to do the no downtime migration and low impact migration. So that's another solution. But today we're going to focus a little bit more, because we're talking about cloud on AWS and so on, focus a little bit more on the SaaS-based solution called Cirrus Migrate Cloud. So this is a true a data mobility solution that is built on cloud. Okay, it's a SaaS solution, although we do allow you to have a enterprise deployment where the SaaS component actually package and live inside your security firewall, so that would make the adaptation in terms of security check and everything a lot simpler. So this data mobility platform, right, whether you run this on-prem or in the cloud or whatnot, is really easy, just like any SaaS solution should be, right? And most of our partners or even sophisticated customer can use very little training, maybe just a morning, okay, and looking out our KBs or the how-to video, they can pretty much navigate and figure out how to do a migration by themselves. Okay. And the other aspect of our solution is that we want it to be completely vendor agnostic. Right? We're great partners of AWS, we're great partners of NetApp, but there are other places where you may have your storage, right, that you want to migrate from into the NetApp, into the AWS, or from other cloud. But most importantly, you want to have the ability to try that out. And for some of the workload, you may say, maybe not, and migrate back, right? So we want to give you complete vendor neutral, vendor agnostic kind of a solution, so that no matter from where and to where, it's never a one-way street, right? And you're covered. You always have your plan B, okay? And that makes you more ready to plan out your or should I say simpler to plan out your migration project. The migration should be live. It's so hard to, if you have 20,000 workload, like I said, if you have 4 workload and so on, you don't need us. Just shut it down or use some free tool and do it. But you have 40,000 machines, like some of our customer have, that we just spoke of before, right? Then you really need a systematic approach where you can migrate the workload without having to coordinate with the 5 or 6 different departments and hundreds of host owners to coordinate in one period of time and say, hey, let's shut things down and do the migration, right? It's not going to fly, okay? and downtime can cost millions of dollars, right, per hours in some mission critical situation. So live migration is a very, very important aspect of our data mobility solution. In our solution, you can deploy, migrate, and completely without downtime. And the next step, which is the final cutover, even that, right, you can do it without downtime. And I'm going to show you how. And of course, in terms of scalability, hyper mobility, okay, we have we treat migration kind of like an operation. You heard of DevOps, SecureOps, FinOps, and things like that, right? So all these things, in terms of migration, why not you have migrate ops? So we in fact created an engine. It's kind of like having CloudFormation or Ansible built in to our solution, okay, where everything is just launch a YAML, and whether you're migrating 100 hosts or 1,000 hosts, it just go. So with all these beautiful things and being vendor neutral and so on, we have done a lot of mission critical migration for different partners. Okay, some of them are on the screen here. In the toughest ones, okay, that their own free tool or their own building homegrown solution and whatnot doesn't work, we are often the one that are brought in to solve the problem. And so hypervisors are very prevailing thing, and VMware has been the predominant platform, right, for hypervisor, for virtual workload. But of course, there are others, including the AWS Outpost, which I consider it as a virtualization platform on-prem, right? And in terms of the over OpenShift, Nutanix, these are all different hypervisor solutions that is besides the VMware. So due to some reason, situation in the market, let's put it that way, right? A lot of customers are considering migrating from VMware to elsewhere. If you look at that matrix there, the top 9 virtualization platform, we support every one of them. Okay, so again, it's not just some specific combination, but any to any. You can go from any of those boxes to any other box, and we have a path to get you there with minimum impact and without downtime. And as a result, we've been dependent upon, and we've been very honored, right, that over the past many years in this business, we created a storage migration market for ourselves, being the leader in this category, and we are the hero, unsung hero behind the scene for many of these customers' migration projects. Some of them are very large, involving, one of them have like 12 or 13 sites, right? Migrating hundreds of tens of petabytes of data with tens of thousands of VM. And so, but because of NDA and all that, we can't really brag about them and get into the specific, but you can see that they're all there. These are all brand name companies, with mission critical workloads. So our solution that these customers and partners depend upon, right? As I mentioned, there are 2 sets of it. One is the legacy on-prem solution using the appliance. We call that the CMO, Cirrus Migrate on-prem. It's more for the Unix, the Solaris, the AS400, fiber channel attached, those kind of storage. And so often when you have a massive storage update with those kind of environment, the on-prem solution will work. But when you talk about AWS cloud or other clouds or other hybrid cloud solution, then the SaaS way is the way to go, because you simply cannot bring the appliance to the cloud. All right, AWS says, what am I going to do with this box? So it has to be SaaS, right? So we created the solution that basically deliver a very, very easy solution that's SaaS, okay, and has the automation built in, okay, that you can launch one migration or hundreds or 1,000 of them all in one shot. And this is kind of like a snapshot of the GUI. So a key event, a quick summary of the key advantage on using our solution is that first, we make it very easy. right? And it's very, very secure, right? We compress the data, but we also encrypt the data. So that gives us acceleration in terms of migration, right? It tends to be 4 to 6 times, and we actually did an independent study, okay, compared with some other tool, because we can compress the data and we can skip the data reduction, skipping the 0. Okay, this is having a mind of its own. Now I know what you mean, Randy. That is kind of like skipping the slide by itself. So acceleration, right? And then everything's live, 0 footprint. We are the only solution that you don't have to pre-deploy any appliance to be the receiver of the data, to have some temporary storage, and then before the final cutover, you then hide. We don't do any of that. It's a very direct approach, 0 footprint. By the time you decide to use our solution, our SaaS solution, to moving your first byte, it can be just 10 minutes. So there's no prep work that is needed, right? To have an elaborate deployment process in order to use a product. Decide, launch, and go. That's it, right? And so, and again, massively scalable, right? So we have something called Migrate Up that is built in, like a built-in Ansible or CloudFormation, where it just define some YAML, launch it, and it would run. So that make it very consistent. Every migration is very consistent with very predictable result. Okay, so this is a snapshot of the GUI here, okay, that shows that we manage everything, we show everything in terms of progress, report, we have integration with, in fact, very deep integration with the FSxN, right, with AWS, right, so that you don't need to manually create any resource, any this. In fact, for FSxN, since it's an iSCSI resource, if you go from a non-iSCSI environment, let's say VMD case, right, now you're in the cloud and you're connected to the FSx, do you even know iSCSI? Do you even know how to connect this so that's a multipath and so on? You don't need to know. Using our solution, we remediate the host for you. We install the iSCSI, we configure the target, we make it persistent, we make the multipath conforming to the vendor, in this case, AWS or FSxN's best practice, and that's it. You don't really need to even learn iSCSI. Okay, so that's how easy it is. We make the solution. So we really talk about Migrate Up. So without Migrate Up is probably best seen in a live animation, right? So I do have a quick short video that shows it. Okay, so let's bring it on. Yeah.
While that's being videos being prepared, I did neglect to mention earlier to the theme of no lock-in. There's an impression that that you can check into the cloud, but the egress cost, if you wanted to migrate out of it, would be high. As of March 5th this year, AWS has waived all egress charges. So we believe that AWS is the best platform. And so if you do decide to move your organization to AWS with Cirrus or other mechanisms, and you decide later that AWS is not the right fit for you, there are no egress charges.
That's excellent, excellent, excellent. So, yeah. So if you go from Cloud B to AWS, their egress unfortunately cannot be waived. So some of the feature that we have to compress and to reduce the data before you egress will help you save a lot of bandwidth and save a lot of egress costs. So it's good to know that AWS doesn't do that to you. Anyway, yeah, so let's play the video. Yeah.
With Cirrus Data Cloud's latest data mobility as code automation platform, Migrate Ops, migrating your entire operating system to AWS has never been easier. Cirrus Data has recently announced one of the most anticipated purpose-built enterprise-scale features on Cirrus Data Cloud. We can now set up our migration operation and complete all tasks with just one click. Cirrus Data Cloud's compute migration might just be your best option to migrate not just your data, but also your entire operating system and applications from any platform to AWS. All you need to do is to first deploy Cirrus Migrate Cloud on your Linux or Windows host. Next, Cirrus Data Cloud will use its AWS integration to create a new instance and start your live migration non-disruptively. Since Cirrus Data has further integrated with AWS to create purpose-built integrations with Amazon FSx or NetApp ONTAP, CMC can optionally migrate your volumes to FSxN directly without having to perform multiple phases of migration. At this point, CMC will automatically perform all the setup for you. When you're ready to cut over, since CMC has already kept your data synchronized in AWS, all we need is to shut down the source and power up the instance in AWS. And once again, with Migrate Ops, you can now perform all these tasks by simply entering a configuration as simple as what we see here, or even create it with the configuration builder on the Cirrus Data Cloud UI. All configurations related to any Cirrus Data's purpose-built Migrate Ops recipe can also be found. You can learn more from the step-by-step video demo or guides from Cirrus Data's Customer Center.
Right. So that's it. So let's open up well, first, thank you, Randy, and thank you, NiMo, for your participation here. And I guess I'll turn it back to Jocelyn for if there's any online questions.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. We really appreciate that. Great information, and I'm sure the audience here has a lot to take away. And thank you to Mark for answering some of these questions live in the chat. I'm going to pose them to our panel to see if we want to add any more color here.
Yeah, I'm reading it.
But if you are audience member, you have a question, just go ahead and either post it in the Q&A or send it in a chat. And I'm going to kind of tick through some of these. So one of the first questions, Wayne, this one goes over to you. Mark did answer, but I'm going to pose it again, so we'll see what if we get any differences.
Okay.
I'm going to do the zero downtime. So they hear the claim a lot, but it really means only no downtime during the migration. So what about cutover?
Okay. Yep. So that's a great question. A lot of time we are brochure by some product that claim they can migrate without downtime and so on. But the truth is that yes, they can do the migration and do the syncing, right, without downtime. But during cutover, you always need to shut things down. However, for our case with CMC and our on-prem solution, we have a patented solution called cMotion. This is literally almost like I'm sure people are familiar with the VMware's vMotion, right? We swing the workload from the old storage to the new while maintaining the illusion to the running application, right, that is still writing to the old storage. So this way, you don't need to unmount and you don't need whatever. And you can hold this state indefinitely. But however, if you have a cluster, you can complete the final cutover, right? So the storage cutover is completely without downtime. So we're the only solution that delivers something that you can migrate and cut over to the new FSxN, right? And without downtime. And you can in fact go back if you want to make more adjustment. Okay. So now the final transition is that if you have cluster, since the cMotion deliver the image to the new storage already, right? You can shut down one node without affecting the entire cluster and cut over and remediate that node and then do it on a second node, a third node, and fourth node. And so let's say it's a 4-node cluster. So this way, your application that is cluster will not have any outage. So that's the best anyone can do, really, right? So, yeah.
Great. Thanks, Wayne. Randy, the audio broke up just a little bit. So could you repeat the egress charge discussion in the news?
Yeah, so that was announced March 5th of this year, and you can use AI or Google and find that. Just Google for March 5th, AWS egress, and you'll happen upon the press release for that. But what the waiver is that if you have deployed an AWS environment and you decide it's not to your liking and you want to go elsewhere, all egress fees will be waived in that case.
Great, thank you. NiMo, this one is for you. Welcome. Sorry, sir. So this one is for you. We're interested in FSxN primarily for data protection, replicating the data disk to a second availability zone or even another region. But how do you sync the boot disk and keep it fresh so that it is part of the protection?
I I can show some light in my.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
So I think, I've been playing with the FSxN a lot, and so I love the, near instant snapshot and all that stuff, the replication. So if I were a database owner, I would use it for my database and it would be protected. But what about the boot drive, right? My Oracle rack, the boot drive that has a lot of config and everything, right? It needs to be protected as well. So, so now you need to have some sort of a mirroring tool, something that is pretty clunky that try to synchronize the boot drive to a boot drive on the FSxN, right? Now, a much more elegant way, okay, and I have the honor of working with actually Wendy on this thing. Do people still remember something called IPXE? Wow. Okay, so what if I can send boot over iSCSI onto the FSxN? Now I don't even need a local boot drive. That's solve all the problem. So maybe Wendy can can shed some light to this.
Yeah, so iPixie, it's an organization and they provide that functionality. So on premise to do that, you actually have to have firmware that supports SAN boot. So with iPixie, you do not have to. So there's an iPixie. This gets really deep into how AWS works. An AMI, and that is actually the iPixie AMI, which is provided by the iPixie organization and is AWS certified. And you can look at it, your community AMIs, and you can just launch your instance from that. And inside of that, you provide the details of what your SAN boot device is in the FSx NetApp, and it will boot from that. So it's called a chain boot in particular. So it's kind of a jump chain boot. And so Cirrus supports that. They can automate that. Of course, it's a little bit more trouble to do than just regularly booting from EBS. That's the easy button. But at scale, of course, you're concerned because that is something that's different. So I always suggest people wanting to use SAN boot at scale use Cirrus to automate that provisioning. Of course, once it's set up, your everything just operates normally like it's in AWS with the EC2 console and rebooting or restarting an instance, changing an instance type. It all just continues to work as normal.
Cool.
Great, thank you. We are really tight on time here. NiMo, do you want to take this one about during the migration, does the data go up to your cloud and back down again? I see you said you're going to answer that.
That is again a vain question, but I can answer it saying the data doesn't go or traverse back to Cirrus Data's cloud. No, it's a point-to-point connection. It's a host-host session that is being created. There are ports that is open just to send the data across from the on-premises straight onto that particular EC2 instance. Wayne, you own this product.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, so yeah, I'm sorry. Can you?
Yeah. Sorry,
I didn't hear.
Oh, no. Yeah,
during the migration, does the data go up to your cloud and back down again? I think they are talking about Cirrus Data Cloud. Yeah.
No.
Okay. Yeah. So absolutely not, right? We don't want to ever see your data. Okay. We don't want to. Okay. So if you're using a SaaS solution, right? So the data path is actually between your hosts and the storage that is attached to your host. And that's it. It never even leave your data center. Okay. So we are just remote controlling that the data mover that is living in the host to tell it when to migrate, how aggressive, when to back down, when to, whatever, right? So that's it. Yeah. So it's just command and control. Never any data coming to outside. Even if you deploy our enterprise edition, where you have a entity running inside the four wall, that entity doesn't see your data either. Right? He's just, again, telling the host what to do.
Great. And I'm going to close us off on the last one. Is there a way to realize the potential costs of running my VMs in AWS? And can I bring my existing Windows licenses or do I need to buy them again?
Yes, you can BYOL, and perhaps NiMo has a tool that does some pricing. AWS has a tool. NetApp has a tool. I don't know if Cirrus has a tool, but you should really talk to an individual instead of using an automated tool because there's a lot of wrinkles in this that can make a big difference in cost reduction.
Anything you want to add, NiMo?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, use the AWS tools for that because Workload Factory doesn't get into that detail yet. But as Randy said, that is more of, an one-to-one engagement to go and review that rather than actually just answering in here. But yeah, feel free to reach out to us and we can
Don't
actually.
rely on the AWS tool. It's a simple calculator. It's not going to give you the optimal effect.
Yeah.
Great. Well, gentlemen, we are over time. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. This replay will be available probably tomorrow, if not this afternoon, and I'll be sure to send it out to everyone who's on the call today. And if you know somebody who missed it, they'll get it as well. Thank you again to Wayne, Randy, and NiMo. We really appreciate you taking the time. If you have any follow-on questions, please go ahead and send them to me, and I'll make sure they get answered for you. It's jocelyn.philbrook@cirrusdata.com, so really easy. And we'll look forward to seeing you again in the future. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.